Yo, what's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're doing another video, another team preview for 2021, and this time it's on Shanghai Dragons. These guys were extremely good last year, and we all know that. They absolutely dominated APAC consistently, finished number one internationally going into the playoffs. But during the playoffs they tripped up. They qualified first in APAC for the playoffs, and then when they actually got to the playoffs they finished third, under who they had previously been in the Seoul Dynasty. This can come down to lucky meta, which is a very reasonable take to have on that playoffs run. These guys definitely had the ability to win the entire thing, but they didn't quite make it. It was still a very big success for the franchise though, highlighting that from season 1 they went from a 0-40 season to now where they finished number 1 in the regular season, made it to the international playoffs. They did very well, and we all know that. They were a phenomenal team last year. So now onto the roster. The DPS line, you've got Fletter. This guy was last season's MVP, and there are literally no worries here. I mean, he got MVP for a reason. He's a highlight of this roster, and this roster is already star-studded, so that is really saying something. Then you've got Lip. Lip is a phenomenal McCree and Sombra player. I think we're seeing more and more usage of Sombra, and also higher skill Sombra players, and Lip really is up there. He can definitely be considered the best Sombra in the league. He's incredible on the Sombra. He also plays the McCree. His McCree is great as well. Which is good because we don't really see too much of DM's McCree, so it's great to see that Lip has that McCree that they can rely on. I think it will be a heavy Ashe meta, so we'll see if Lip's going to be playing that or if DM's going to be playing it. Either one of them playing it though, I think you can feel happy in this roster to succeed running any meta really. Next up you've got DM. So these three players so far were on the team last year. DM didn't see a ton of playtime during the regular season, but he did come in the playoffs, and although they didn't seem as good as they were in the regular season, that's not to say he was bad. DM is so mechanically talented and skilled. He's an incredible Widow. This is a bit of a random thing to bring up, but he's now won the Widow 1v1 tournament 2 years in a row. So that just shows you really his mechanics. While in-game that translates a bit differently, his mechanics are so solid, and another year under Coach Moon is going to be really good for this guy. Maybe work on his game sense, maybe work on just the stuff in-game that doesn't rely on hitting shots, because he's already got that covered. Yeah, DM's Widow is phenomenal. It's one of the best in the league, if not the best, and that is really saying something. Finally, for the DPS line, you've got an interesting one. This is the only new guy they picked up, unless you count DM being dropped and then picked up again. But this is the only properly new guy you're seeing come into this roster, and it's an interesting one. If you haven't already heard about this roster, it might shock you, and it's Erster. Now, Erster was benched on the Atlanta Reign last year for most of the season until Baby Bay left. And this was really confusing. I think this was just a bad choice from the coaches, rather than Erster playing badly in scrims or something, because in Season 2, Erster had such a great season. Going into Season 3, many people had this guy predicted for MVP, because of how good his Season 2 was. He did so well on the Atlanta Reign Season 2, and then coming into Season 3, he was not playing whatsoever until the end. When he was playing at the end also, he didn't look too great. This could be because he wasn't scrimming all year, he wasn't playing all year, but he didn't look like what he was in Season 2. And hopefully, under Coach Moon, he can get that back. He can be pushed to be the MVP caliber player that he was in Season 2. We've seen Erster at that level. I think we can see Erster at that level again under Coach Moon, who is undoubtedly one of the best coaches in the league, at least was last year. But I don't really see a place for him. He could just be a backup for the other players to release some stress, but Fletter plays most of the stuff Erster plays, just to a higher standard. Now, you could be going for different play styles. For example, on the Tracer, Fletter's Tracer is more team-oriented, more passive, pushing up with the team, whereas Erster's, we might see a bit of flanking, a bit of, going for the kills yourself, trying to get the picks, trying to make the plays. So, this DPS line is incredible. This DPS line is definitely in the conversation for best in the league. I'd give it a 10 out of 10. So moving on to the tank line, we'll start off with the obvious one. You've got Void. Void definitely could have got MVP last year. He was such a great player. He was so consistent on every tank he played. He was one of the best in the league. There was such a clear gap between Void and the other top players, and then kind of middle of the pack players. His skill ceiling, we've seen, is extremely high. He makes plays, but also backs up his team when needed, plays supportive, peels when needed, but can also get a killer grav or a huge diva bomb. This year he's got no backup. They did drop Gaguri, so that could put a bit more pressure on Void. If he can't play, it's looking very bad for this team. but as long as he's always in the roster, they're going to look great. Alright, now onto the interesting one. These guys dropped Fearless and Stand 1 and picked up Fate. Now the Fearless drop was interesting because this team wanted to keep Fearless, but Fearless wanted to go to Dallas. So obviously these guys weren't planning on picking up Fate. And on paper, this guy seems like a downgrade. You're not wrong in thinking that. I think that as well. Fate, his Winston isn't Fearless's Winston. But this guy looked best under Coach Moon in Season 1. And now he's playing back under Coach Moon. And I have faith in Fate and Coach Moon being able to get Fate back to where he once was. Similar with Erster, but I feel it even stronger about Fate because this guy has shown MVP level plays before. And although it was in Season 1 where, you know, the league was new, teams were a lot weaker, but Fate is such a good main tank. And also, I want to talk about one other thing to do with Fate. Last year, Stand 1 and Fearless was splitting playtime, but now they've only got Fate. So Fate's going to be in this roster scrimming all the time. And this could really help this roster, you know, build the synergy they need and have Fate be a solid foundation for the team because he's always going to be playing, he's always going to be in. Same with Void. They should be able to build up great synergy because they're always going to be scrimming. And it's really exciting to see this guy on a top tier team. Alright, so now into the support line. You've got Jae Gong. We all know he's extremely aggressive, makes the plays, which we saw last year, didn't actually hinder the team whatsoever. They need someone to make the plays, and often it was Jae Gong. We all know that one clip where he just jumped into the shock and got eaten alive. So that is a bit of a worry, but we saw Jae Gong do so well last year. I think there's no reason to say he's going to perform poorly this year. Other than one thing. Last year they did have Fearless, and Fearless was quite an aggressive player. That definitely helped Jae Gong in dive metas, for example, where he'd be on the Lucio and Fearless would be on the Winston. And it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic might shift with Fate as the main tank. But I don't think there's anything to worry about there because we also saw him playing with Stand 1, and Stand 1 was definitely a more reserved player, but he still found a lot of success. Then you've got two flex supports. You've got Izzyaki, a very solid player. There's not much to say about this guy. He's not going to be holding back your team, but he's also not going to be pushing them to be the best they can be. It's very good to see they've kept him around because I think he was a good foundation when you've got many playmakers, and I don't really see who they could have got as an upgrade. Alright, finally you've got Molly from the Chengdu Hunters. This guy's also a flex support, and it's going to be very important this season, I think, for teams to have two flex supports because of double flex support metas. Unless you have a main support who's extremely flexible, I think having two flex supports is going to be the way to go, because double flex support metas are really common. We saw that last year, and I think this year that's going to be a big thing. So I think these guys still having two flex supports is very good to see, and because of that, I really don't see any weakness in this roster. You have a few question marks about Fate and also Erster, but the question marks about Erster don't even matter if you just ran Flutter Lip or Flutter DM or even DM Lip. But Fate is, I think in most people's eyes, a big question mark. I'm not too concerned about him, but I know many people are concerned about him, and that does make sense, you know. Fearless was one of the biggest parts of this team last year, and he's gone and he's been replaced, but I feel confident in Fate to be able to succeed this season. This team is no doubt going to be an incredible team. They should be consistently getting number 1 in the Eastern Division. You can expect them to perform tournament after tournament. We're expecting multiple tournament finals appearances from these guys. This season, the tournaments are international, which is going to be a bit more difficult for these guys. If it was just in the East, you'd expect them to win every tournament. But because it's international, there's a few more question marks. But you really do expect a finals appearance in 2, maybe 3 of these tournaments. Thanks so much for watching the video, everyone. I really appreciate it. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share. And I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.